here tonight with Paul West, author of First Cause, his debut novel. Thanks so much for being here with us tonight, Paul. I'm really excited to hear more about you and your book. Before we get started, could you give us a brief synopsis of what First Cause is about for those who are watching and haven't read the book yet?
Well, First Cause takes place in the present, but the backdrop is in the past, and it's sort of about how people deal with a world, I guess, whose assumptions have radically been changed by a sudden occurrence. It follows a few different people in the story in the present day. It starts in flashback mode, but it's about human possibility. It's sort of a speculation of what we might do if all bets are off.
So, where did you first come up with this idea for this novel, this human possibility?
I came up with it as an undergrad, actually, back in the early 90s at NYU. I studied history, and when I was studying history, one of the things that I began to realize was that people have a lot of assumptions and a lot of ideas about things that they don't really examine that closely. And we don't think that much about what possibility really means in terms of people and as individuals and as society. And what I wanted to do was examine human possibility by taking one aspect of history, tweaking it a bit, and then maybe showing how things might play out, after this event occurred. So back in the early 90s, it was probably like 1990 and 91, I came up with it as a screenplay idea. Something told me it wasn't the right time.
So it obviously took quite a few years for this to all come together. What was your process like? How did you get all of your thoughts from your head to this that I'm holding today?
Well, I mean, like I said, it's sort of a 10-year, probably an 8 or 9 year gestation period between, when I came up with the idea, scribbled some notes down, put them away, forgot about them, and then dug them out again. Probably about 1998, late 98 or early 99, I remembered it. I dug up the notes, kind of looked them over for a bit and decided whether I really wanted to pursue this because it was a big undertaking. And then I began to draft it. It begins, you've read it, it begins in flashback mode. It jumps back and forth for the first, third of the book, and then it all threads together and goes forward as a continuous story. So I had to make sure all the timelines were consistent, that there weren't any gaps. I had to learn the characters. As a writer, one of the things I believe in doing is making the characters believable. And one of the things that helped me was making sure I knew who the characters were as people. So I would do little things like I'd jot down biographical information about Cyrus or about any one of the people in the book. Little stuff like their birthdays and other stuff, where they're from, where their hometown is. Like Bob Rayom grew up in Providence, but he's born in Montreal, I think. Things like that. So when I wrote the dialogue, it would write itself. So all that took a while, and that took probably about a year and a half, just to thread it together so I could really begin writing. And then once I began writing, it took about probably 4 or 5 years to write, partly because I was busy. I was on a bunch of sports teams, I had a full-time job, I live in New York, I'm up to a lot of stuff. Going to Mets games, for example. And one obstacle I faced was I had this old word processor. And this was about 99 or so, when computers were prohibitively expensive. And I rebooted, and it said operating system not found. And that basically means that it's never going to work again. So I freaked out for a little, for 20 minutes, and then I remembered that everything was on disk, floppy disk, back in the day. So all my edits for about a year and a half or 2 years were manual, meaning I couldn't just wake up in the middle of the night and start typing. I had to write everything down and then keep all the papers in order and get to Kinko's or a place called, Kev's Copy Center up on Lenox Avenue, or stay late at work, or find ways to get in front of a computer when I could synthesize it all, put it together, and then print it out, carry it around so I could make sure it all made sense. So that really slowed me down. I would write on the train at 3 in the morning. I would write, at happy hour. When my friends went to the bathroom or something, I would write between innings at my softball games. I would do it whenever I could fit it in. So it took a while.
When people finish the last page and they put it down, what do you want them to take away from First Cause?
I hope they'll enjoy it, first of all, because it's fiction, and the idea is, if if I wanted to write an essay or something of that sort, then I could have just written that. I mean, the idea was I wanted people to enjoy it at some level. I'm a big history guy and a nonfiction reader, and even mostly a nonfiction writer, but a lot of the inspiration, stylistically and creatively and other things, comes from, music. A lot of authors, Stephen King being an author who's written a lot of schlock, but who's also not taken seriously enough as a good writer and someone who really is good at putting people into the minds of characters, when they're motivated by fear. So, I want people to enjoy it as a story, and want to know what happens and be captivated. But I also want them to think about, some of the thinking points that are in it, some of the places in which I insert things that are meant to inspire someone to think about how they might react in that situation, or how might society react in that situation. How are their assumptions maybe a little more limited than they could be? For example, a lot of people think that this was inspired by 9/11, and that's not the case. It was inspired by things like 9/11, which occur all over the place in smaller scales. And my idea is that all the things you hear people say when something happens to or around or near them that's disconcerting or jarring or life-changing, quote-unquote, an accident, a near miss, an injury, an illness, they always say it makes you think, quote-unquote. That's what they so often say. And my attitude is, well, it shouldn't take something catastrophic or unsettling or earth-shattering to make you think. We should think more about our assumptions and our approach to life and about our possibilities all the time. And if we did that, then maybe, maybe our world would be different,
Yeah.
We'd explore more possibilities. And so I want people to put it down. And there are places in the book where it's kind of probably obvious what I think about certain things, where I mentioned McCarthyism, for example, little things like that. But for the most part, it isn't a matter of whether or not you agree with my politics or anything. It's just a question of, when you put it down, think about your ideas, think about your perceptions and your assumptions, think about what you might do if all your assumptions were shifted, because something you didn't expect to happen, happened right in front of you or happened next door. So I want people to think. I just want people to think and to enjoy it,
All right.
to get to the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I definitely enjoyed it, and it did make me think. So thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. It was wonderful. And for all of you out there who haven't read First Cause, check it out. www.firstcauseproject.com. You can see the book, you can read little previews, you can read reviews, and find out where you can purchase it.